There is a very famous thought experiment called the evil demon or evil genius from Descartes. During his meditations on first philosophy in 1641, he came up with the question, how can I know that an all-powerful, malicious being isn't deceiving me about everything? My senses, my memories, and even my mathematics. This thought experiment has morphed into more modern theories such as the matrix or the simulation hypothesis. How can we know that your whole experience of life and reality isn't simply a deception? The answer that Descartes came up with is the famous I think, therefore I am. The basis of this argument is that even if an evil demon was deceiving him, the very act of doubting proves that he exists. Now, at first glance, that seems to answer the question. For the very fact that I'm questioning whether I'm being deceived or whether that my existence is an illusion proves that I must exist. For who is the one thinking? Who is the one doubting? It must be me, right? The one that exists. However, there are certain rebuttals to this proposition or to this conclusion. For example, what if this evil demon, the demiurge perhaps, implanted these doubts simply to make the illusion more convincing, simply to make it seem like if you can think, if there are thoughts, then you must be the one thinking, you must be the one doubting, therefore you must exist. And this can't be an illusion, this can't be a deception, right? But what if those doubts themselves were also implanted by the evil genius? Now, what certain philosophers who have heard these rebuttals would say is that even if the doubt is implanted, the experience of doubting still exists. So, essentially what they're saying is, even though it's true that the doubt itself may be implanted by this evil genius, the fact that there's doubt at all still proves existence. At this point, they're no longer arguing that it must definitely be true that you're a human, or that the world is true, or that your memories are true. They're not arguing for that anymore. They're only arguing for the fact that there is an experience, or that there is existence. Even if it isn't what it seems to be, the fact that there's doubt at all proves that there is an experience, and that there is an existence, and that it's not all just an illusion. Now, this is where we're going to dive into what you could say I, or the self, has realized in my own journey, in my own seeking of truth. This is my 2 cents on the matter. See, although there is some validity to the fact that doubt appearing or thoughts appearing proves that there is something, whether it is not what we think it is, whether it's not what it appears to be, it proves that there is something there, right? Even if the doubts are implanted by an evil genius or an evil demon such as the demiurge or the archons, it proves that I still exist, because if I didn't exist, then who are they deceiving? What would be the need for the deception? What would be the need for Maya? They must be creating this illusion to deceive me, right? So all of this is assuming that to experience any object, there must be a subject. For there to be any experience, there must be an experiencer. However, what if there is no one experiencing the experience? What if experience is simply experiencing itself? What if there is no cause to the experience? What if there is no mechanical process which is occurring within time or space? This would align more with certain traditions which cover topics such as non-dual awareness, subjectless experience, pure appearance. Some would say awareness without an owner. This dissolves the final assumption from Descartes that the world, that there is not even a world. The assumption that there's a world, it dissolves that. The assumption that there is a mind, it dissolves that. The assumption that there is even a subject, it dissolves that. In this view, there is no I behind the experience. And I know that may sound contradictory because I said this is what I realized. Of course, there is no I for me to realize anything. That's why I said the self. It's just that we are using language, and language are symbols which are inherently inaccurate because the symbol is never what the symbol is representing. The map is never the territory, so as long as we use words, there will be some inaccuracies. It's just that I have to use phrases like, this is what I have realized, otherwise you won't understand what I'm saying. Because you're still operating under the worldview and the paradigm which I'm trying to deconstruct. So for you to even understand it, I need to use the flawed worldview which you're currently operating within to deconstruct the very worldview that you're operating within. So I'm using falsehood to deconstruct falsehood so that only the truth remains. So to continue, this view would suggest that there is no I behind the experience, no thinker behind thoughts, no seer behind seeing, just seeing, just thinking, just appearing. This aligns with Buddhist concepts of emptiness known as shunyata, or Advaita Vedanta's not to. If thoughts think themselves and appearances simply appear, then there is no subject and there is no one to deceive. Deception itself becomes just another appearance appearing. At this point, the question, is this real, loses its grip, because there is no standpoint outside of appearance to measure realness from. If everything is an appearance appearing, how can you know which appearances are real, which appearances are false? They're all just appearances. In this view, whatever appears, appears, with no foundation required, with no ground required, and this ultimately reveals the groundlessness of what we call reality. This may sound like a cop-out. This may sound like I'm playing word games. This may sound invalid due to circular logic. However, this is the deepest form of skepticism and the deepest form of peace at the same time. This is the only way to surrender to truth. Once you realize that the truth is absolute, the truth will be true no matter what. This is how you can truly release suffering. This will reshape your view on motivation, on identity, on the meaning of life. All of these things become radically recontextualized. The search for your true self will conclude, for you will realize that the self is itself, since that's all it could ever be. The truth is true, otherwise it wouldn't be the truth. Even falsehood itself is false. The self is itself because it could never be anything else. The truth is true because if it weren't, it wouldn't be the truth. Falsehood is false. It doesn't need to be defeated, only seen. This is not a new belief system. This is not a dogma. This is the collapse of the need for belief. There's nothing to prove because proof presupposes a standpoint. A standpoint presupposes a self, and the self has been seen as an appearance, not an owner. When I say the self in this reference, I'm talking about the particular self, the relative self, the self which is identified with a human body and a name and a life and a past and its actions and its behaviors. Whereas when I speak of the absolute self, the self which is itself, that self is not identified with anything, for it has no particular qualities, for it was not born and it will never die, for it has no body. It does not partake in any actions. So after this revelation, what remains? It is simply truth being true, appearances appearing, reality happening. And this is why I say in my videos over and over that nothing can be gained, nothing can be lost. There never was a seeker seeking enlightenment. There never was an enlightenment to reach. Nothing has ever happened. That is the cosmic joke. When the self realizes itself and realizes that it always has been itself, that the illusion always was illusory, the appearances always were nothing but appearances, with no ground, with no meaning, with no purpose, one can experience hysteria, or what one can call divine hysteria. That's when you reach the punchline. And one could think that this is a nihilistic view which may flatten life. However, paradoxically, it frees it. The joy, the sadness, the effort, the rest, the work, the leisure, all continue. However, they no longer hold the burden of a particular self trying to be something, trying to become something, trying to fit in a box. Thank you for listening.